Welcome to Legacy Conversations, a channel where we preserve military memories and history.
Hello everyone, it's Koos. Welcome here. You know, Legacy is actually a bit of a historical site channel if you think about it, because what we do is we speak to people and they tell us their life story. They tell us about their experiences during the long South African border war. But of course there were more than just the South African border war going on. There was a very dirty and most horrible type of civil war almost going on. And the South African police force were involved in all of them. And in fact, the South African police force started long before the national servicemen arrived, as I keep on saying to people. And of course, I was a member of the South African police force, so you will know where my loyalty lies. But anyway, everyone did very well. We highly respect the South African Defence Force. Let me tell you, at that stage, it was probably the best army for what it was doing. And if I say army, I mean the Air Force, Navy, everyone. Medical Corps, medical service, best in the world. I don't think there was anything coming close. In fact, where the Rhodesians ended, the South Africans took over. The difference here is that the Rhodesian military is held as something very, very, very good, very great, which of course they were. But the South African Defence Force, sadly, I don't think we sold ourselves well afterwards, which makes channels like these actually very, very valuable for the historians. But we didn't do it for the historians. In fact, we did it because we want our story to come out. We are like the Vietnam generation. In other words, I've been to the border 6 times, I think, 5, 6 times. And you come back and the only difference is you go from your camouflage uniform, you would go to your blue uniform, and you would switch driver seats. You would go from a Casper armored vehicle, of which we do have a video which you can go and look at, to your Golf GTI in the flying squad where I was in Pretoria normally when I wasn't, posted out to the SAP COIN or South African Police Force counterinsurgency units, which is specialist, very specialist. The difference was the Caspers, despite what people would claim today, we do about 120 maximum, perhaps 140 kilometers an hour downhill. That is, if there's a flying squad driver behind the wheel, which was actually quite dangerous. And they were quick. I mean, they were quicker than the Buffalo, which we also have an episode, but I think the Rattles were actually quicker than the Casper. But I don't want to start a fight with that. We loved our Caspers more than what we loved our, I want to say our girlfriends, man, because most of us were not married then, but you know what I mean. The problem is when you get in a Golf GTI or a Ford XR6 in a flying squad anyway, after driving a Casper for a few months, by the time you're 3rd gear, 4th gear, you're about 200 kilos an hour. And that road becomes narrow like this in front of you, and you realize, whoosh, 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 this is not a Casper. But then again, you can throw a GTI or Sierra or whatever you had, Skyline 2.8s, Laurels. You could throw those things into a corner, man. It was fantastic. I do go into some detail in my books. Gewetenlose strate in the Afrikaans version, as well as mean streets, life in the apartheid police, the mean streets. And by the mean streets, of course, I mean policing the very violent streets of South Africa in the 80s. Yeah, it was very, very different, and we were very well armed. Well, I always say to people when I arrived at the flying squad, I had a P-38 with 8 rounds and another 8 rounds in an extra magazine. And it was a good pistol. There's nothing wrong with it. It had actually fantastic features, which I really liked. For instance, if it was cocked, or you had a bullet in the chamber, it had like a little pin sticking out at the back, so in the dark you could feel it. You could actually feel where it's loaded like that. That also was quite an argument between the lads. There were no real standing orders on it. but I always carried my weapon loaded. In other words, it would be loaded with a round in the chamber, but with a hammer down. Simply because you could be attacked by a knife, or you could be overtaken from behind. That happened as well, in the mean streets. There's not a mark of Queensberry or any rules or whatever, we call those people. It's not like that at all. That is why in the police college, if you do self-defense training and you do a bit, they don't match you according to size. You match wherever is matched on the other side. And I spoke about that before also, because you would first fight against each other, which wasn't that bad because, it's your mates, you're not really going to try and kill each other. But then they line you up against a different platoon, and that is outright war. So you would be standing in the gymnasium, and of course the sergeants would be also there, and they would take bets on who's going to move who. And so you could eye the guy on the other side, and you could work out that plus minus this is going to be your opponent, because it's like lines lining up. And then you have about 2 minutes of mayhem there in the arena. And you would show the guy the evil eye, you're going to murder him, kill him, he's dead, you're going to get him. I don't know why we acted like that, but when you're young and patriotic, I mean, you can become like that. But anyway, the theory was if you arrest somebody and this somebody wants to fight back, and it happened, especially when there's drunk parties, you would arrive, and a lot of policemen listening to me will laugh now, but really, guys, it's the funniest thing. You arrive there and there's a fight going on between these two drunks, they had a braai and after the rugby, and now they just like each other, moor each other there, or they moor the wife or whatever, and you arrive there as a police. They all gang up, sure as hell. They declare a truce there amongst themselves, and they attack you. Even the damn dog will attack you. So there were ways of dealing with them as well. So the theory was, if you're a big guy, you might be slower, but if you hit something, it's gonna go down. And if you're small, you can duck and dive and sting like a bee, man. Yeah, well, probably wasn't it? Anyway, but in the street, the fights weren't like a boxing match at all. You would just move. Wheel spanner worked very well, actually. As later days, they started getting tongvas and all sort of things. But anyway, guys, why I'm making this video is I was speaking just last week. I was speaking to Commandant Atspies. He was a navigator and a pilot in the South African Air Force. He flew combat in Wambuland, he flew it in Angola, he flew in Rhodesia, and inside South Africa. He's just an amazing man, and his story is so fantastic. We're going to have a lot of interviews with him, conversations. And when he was flying in Rhodesia, of course, he was flying as a policeman, because in those days, everybody who went there from the SAP anyway became policemen. Not really, but they became policemen, so they issued a police camo uniform. And they would be there. If he was a lieutenant in the SAP, he would be a lieutenant in the police, or a squadron leader or something in the Rhodesian Air Force, because sometimes they'd be wearing Rhodesian camo. That's with Special Forces. When they were operating there, look at SW4E. He talks about it quite a lot. And then in Angola, during Op Savannah, before Op Savannah, they would be wearing Portuguese camo. But they were still South Africans, they were just wearing different, camouflage to fit in. But he made a comment. He said to me, Koos, the police actually had very good clothing. And coming right from the SAF, was a bit superior, if I may say so. Actually, they are superior, to be honest. You can't just take a guy from the street and expect him to fix a helicopter or something. You need to train him, you need to be dedicated. They're professionals, absolutely professional outfit. So were the army as well, but you know what I mean. It's one thing to give a guy a rifle and train him as an infantryman, and another thing to train an aircraft mechanic or a pilot. It's a different way of doing things. But so I was very pleased when he said to me that the police camouflage, he found it very easy to wear. It was very nice clothing. And then he described to me that he had a camouflage jacket, which he would wear in the winter, and he had like an inner inside it. Now remember guys, this is long before the op yes, of you people arrived in the army. I mean, that thing is fantastic. If I could have stolen one and wore it and got away with it, I would have done it, because the South African police counterinsurgency units, when they first went to Rhodesia, they didn't even have camouflage uniforms. It came a bit later. And then it changed. It became, they were first generation, which looked slightly different than the one I'm going to show you now. Because I was thinking, while he was talking about that, I thought, well, I have one of these things here. And let me show you what it looked like. I mean, guys, this is a historical channel. I say it again, we should never assume that those following us will know what we're talking about. That's why I always say to people, talk stupid. Praat dom. Verduidelik meer. You know, explain a bit more than what you would normally do, because we don't know if the people here following us will actually know what we're talking about. That's also why we brought out the series on the Ratel, as well as the G5, the G6, the First Arend, the Valkyrie, and lots of aircraft, and yeah, whatever we could. How to become a paratrooper, you know, all those things are coming out. It's very important, guys. It's important that you speak to me as well, because we need to show them what does your equipment look like. What's a bossut? I mean, about 2-3 years ago, we had a former 3-2 battalion member, later a honorary member, wonderful fellow. He was showing us the escape kit on 3-2 battalion's recce wing, and that was fantastic to see, and it went over very well. So I thought to myself, let me show you a few things which we as policemen were actually issued with. But anyway, the first thing you would get if you arrive for border duty, it doesn't matter if it's in South Africa or up north, doesn't matter. You would be lined up, and the Bible people would arrive, the Bible Genootskap, the Bible Society of South Africa, and they would ask you if you want a little pocket Bible. And they would also say to you, look, if you're an old boss op, if you're an old veteran, you've been to the bush many times, and you already have a Bible like that, please don't take another one, because, you know, at the end of the day, we need to spread it to everybody. And I think, again, it's a special forces people, and a lot of you as well who saw combat, who will say there is no such thing as an atheist in the trenches. And that's very true. The South African military, by which I include the police and the counterinsurgency units, were very, very religious and very Protestant-based, not really Catholic. And you better not be a Seventh-day Adventist or something weird there. But everybody was treated very well. You know, I made a point of asking all the Jewish lads who served, every one of them, in every video you will ask, you will hear me saying, were you treated because of your Jewish faith a bit different? Is no, of course, there were no such thing. Yeah, so whatever these enemies of us, these Takara and liberals want to say today, we were not anti-Semitic in any sense of the word. In fact, Israel was one of our greatest friends. Today, well, it's a BRICS country and things are different, but that's not what I'm talking about here. So we would get a Bible, and I do mention it in one of my book episodes, the GMJ books. I do mention this as well when I show the Bible. I can't remember in which one, but I do mention the Bibles in many, many of the books. Anyway, so here, this one is in Afrikaans. It's in Nuwe Testament in Psalms. And if you guys can see, it has a police star on it, which we're very proud about. And then inside, you would have your name and a little subscription. I need my glasses to read. It would say, hierdie testament is 'n geskenk van die Bybelgenootskap van Suid-Afrika. And then you write your rank and your name. I was a sergeant then. Tydens u aktiewe diens ter verdediging van ons geliefde land, mag hierdie deel van die toerusting dien tot u verdere geestelike bewapening vir die lewensstryd. Now, you know guys, a lot of people will disagree or not agree or whatever, I don't care. We were fighting communism. A lot of people out there in the world, you know, the idiots who hasn't been there, and those who wants to gat gabba, They will tell you that it was all about race. Let me tell you, race played no role in that war, nothing whatsoever. There were black policemen on the border with us. There were black soldiers. If you take the elite units like 3-2 Battalion, 3-1 Battalion, 5 Reconnaissance Commando, man, they were black. They were black. 95% of those units were black. They had white leadership until the black soldiers became officers. Even Kufut was mostly black. Where's the racism now? Tell me. No, you can't. So for us, it was against communism. Now, communism, of course, denies God. Yes, because it tries to be logical, tries to be rational. Will say something like, okay, tell me, show me God. Show me. Okay, you cannot show God. It's invisible. You can't see it. You can feel God like a wind, but you can't see it. Therefore, there's no God. That's how they argued. And it's idiotic. It's a totally idiotic thing. You either believe or you don't. In fact, to believe in what you cannot see is worth a lot more than what you can see, isn't it? But I don't want to go into that now. Russia has changed. It's not a communist country anymore. In fact, it is now a Christian country. Of course, we can say a lot about exactly what they believe in and what not. But that's not the point. If you look at where Russia is today and where the US, the second beast of the Bible today, is, then you know which one is the atheist country and which one is not. It's sad to witness, but that was predicted in the Bible as well. If you want to know more, read my book, Oath of Evil, the War on Protestantism. You'll find out that more than 90 million Christians has been killed in the last 100 years. In fact, every, I think, 6 minutes of me talking here, there's a Christian somewhere who's been killed. Yeah, murdered for his faith. Yeah, it's happening. But besides now getting this little Bible, you would of course not go to the border in your blue uniform. You might in the South African borders move in your blue uniform because of secrecy reasons. And yeah, you had a bunch of gabbas there in Parliament, they were such wankers, I tell you. And they didn't want to see that the police was militarized. Oh, no. Police were only fighting in Rhodesia since 1966, you flippin' idiot. But no, we shouldn't wear camouflage uniforms in the townships because, it looks so, it looks like it's so bad in the eyes of the world. Just last week also, I listened to a guy talking as a former MI6 agent, very well-known journalist these days, highly respected. I really like him. And he said, well, I was in South Africa and I became friends with a Broederbond. Okay, the way he says Broederbond is fantastic. Now, the Broederbond, for you who don't know, was like a secret organization for white Afrikaans males. Probably some English ones there too, some Sotis. And they formed like almost a shadow government. And they were really, it's like the Freemasons, it's total cultic as far as I'm concerned. Very secretive. You have to invite it in. My dad was invited to them. He went once and said he wanted nothing to do with them. He'll expose them, in fact, and he did. Cost him his career. And that's what the Bible says, by the way. Nothing to do with these organizations. Why? Because they do things in secret, but expose them. Yeah, I think it's in Ephesians where it says that. Ephesians. And I like exposing them. I like exposing the occult. I do it all the time in my books, especially Oath of Evil, because guess what? In their writings from the 1970s, they said that 2025 is going to be the year in which they start revealing themselves. That's the occultists. That is the satanic people, the Satan worshippers. And guess what, guys? As we listen today to the news and we see what's happening, and there's wars and rumors of wars, and you can see this US, the second beast, is turning totally fascist. Yeah, they are revealing themselves. That's true. Why are doing that? But he infiltrated these people anyway, this MI6 agent, and he says, the change came when they started asking questions, and they said, what will our children be going through, our grandchildren, if we don't stop this fight with, these people, these freedom fighters? We don't stop our fight with them. It's going to be war forever. I mean, we need to stop this. And that is where it started, of course, and that's where some of you will say the big betrayal and the groot surrender and all those things came from. I don't want to go into that, guys. We're talking history here. Other people will judge. Some of you voted yes, some of you voted no. Some of you will be very angry on what's happening right now, and you should be. And others of you will say, no, it's fantastic. But anyway, we were fighting communism, and communism to us was the same as atheism. In fact, if you wanted trouble in the South African police force, refuse to attend a Bible parade, which is every morning, still to this very day. Or in the army, I'm sure it was the same that side. Disrespect the pastors, which they call chaplains. Yeah, do that. See what happens. And shoot your little pocket Bible because you want to test the caliber of your R1 rifle to see if it will shoot through or not. Yeah, it goes right through. But at the same time, I do know there's a lot of people who actually survived bullet wounds because their Bible did stop a bullet. It happens, guys. Ballistics is an interesting science. But anyway, you'll be standing there and at some stage you'll get into your camouflage dress. So let's go through it. I want to show you. The first thing, not everyone had it, but most of us had it, was a beret. You had your standard police camo beret. If this looks very familiar to you, 3-2 Battalion, you stole our camouflage. Yes, this is 3-2 Battalion camouflage, which I stole from the SAP. But we forgive you. It's okay. No problem. Of course, they would have a different unit badge. We would have a copper star of a South African police force there. I don't know if this thing still looks like that in the police service, which I sort of urinate on. But that's my view. Anyway, there was a very special way you put this beret in your head. I'm not going to demonstrate it to you. You would actually make it wet so that it can have a right angle. And at one stage, it then became almost a symbol of a special task force, which was the police special forces. But it was never, in my time, never issued to them only. I understand today it's only the police special task force who's allowed to wear camo because they disbanded the counterinsurgency units. They removed them from the border areas. They opened the floodgates, and guess what? Yeah, no, it's a bit hard to find the job, ne? Bit difficult. Why? Because the Malawians take your job. Zimbabwean too. Somalians. Yeah, they too. Clever strategy. Brilliant, mate. Brilliant. Oh, you did so well. Yeah. Of course, a country without borders ain't a country, you know. It's part of the World Economic Forum crap. One of the stupidest things ever to move the police away from the borders. The police were not only doing on the South African border counterinsurgency, they were also doing counterterrorism, and they were also doing counter-crime. And they kept things under control, and then you removed them. Clever. Now it's over. There's no way in the world. You also sold all the Caspers, didn't you? About 1,200 went to India. Yeah, we see them when we go to India. Yeah, we put new lights on them. Great. Interesting. And suddenly when the Iraqi war, the second one broke out, you had like South African anti-landmine vehicles and things were all over the place. And suddenly the rest of the world woke up. And suddenly you had these type of vehicles everywhere. And then they started saying, oh, look at our technology. We had it in 1975 already. But you don't know that. No, of course not. Of course not. Perhaps you should read American Military Might Debunked. Perhaps you'll learn something. South African technology, mate. South African technology. Yeah, taken to Australia by the engineers, South African engineers, and probably sold there or to the US, and then they started building their own vehicles. Yeah, that's what happened, probably. Interesting, these things. Yeah. Do you know, for instance, that NATO had no air superiority in the 1980s because of the South Africans? You know that? No. Yeah, guys, you know, when I say these things, I'm not being sarcastic with you who's listening to me. I'm talking now to those, you know, who look down upon us because they don't know anything and they think they're better. because I don't know anything. Yeah, perhaps you should read Code and Blue Tang. Read it. You will find out that the West had no air superiority in Western Europe, Eastern Europe during the 1980s. Yeah, why not? Kukri helmet system. Yeah, it was stolen by a GRU spy. Yeah, and handed to them. Missiles, 8 times better than the Western ones. 8 times, not 8%, 8 times. These are statistics, guys. Airframes, 1-on-1, same. Yeah, interesting. You know, when East Germany became West Germany, in Germany, they tested that Air Force. Yeah, they took them to Nellis, they took them to the Air Force bases. And guess what? F-15s, F-16s, F-18s, they lost those dogfights every single time. Yeah, read Code and Blue Tang, I know these things. Anyway, you would have like your beret, you could wear it. Funny thing about the beret is it did not have the day glow inside. I don't think it was ever designed to be operated on in the bush as such. It gave no protection against the sun. For me, it was ceremonial use and it was a nice thing to wear. I love to wear mine. And at the back you had these little strings. And let me explain something to you as a former sergeant in the police. God will not have mercy on your soul if I walk past you and these things hangs like a damn Cuban down your neck. Yeah, it will not go well with you. No, there's a very special way of tying these things down, and I don't want to see anything hanging and hanging it down upon you unless issued. Yeah, that was the way in the old police. Anyway, you could even choose your own camo if you were very close to the in Pretoria, and you could go to the depots before you go in the border. You filled in a form, and then you could walk around. You could choose your shirt to actually match your pants. But then there was the other way of doing it is you would make sure that since you want to look like a old boss officer, you can even wash your camo in jig or something so that it's a bit faded. The people can see you're not from here. And then of course you never wore any rank on it if you could help it. I never wore any rank on mine except during training. And even then I didn't at times. But that's the way it was. You didn't salute in the field either because you make a guy a target. So you can definitely see the difference between the camos in the sense this one is faded, not because of jig, but because it was worn quite a bit. So that's the story of a beret. So you could have your beret and and you still have it. And then normally you would be seen in this cap, but you did have a bush hat as well. Bush hat was a bit scarce. But this cap is the normal one they would be wearing. You can see the South African Police Force star is on it. I often wondered if this makes a good target, that little red in it. So I asked the warrant officer and he said to me, look here, you. If a terrorist is that close to you to see that star and you haven't killed him, we'll talk about this behind the shed. You know what I mean? Yeah. Well, exactly what he means. So in other words, it's the same story as getting cold. Because the uniform wasn't designed for harsh temperatures, designed for Rhodesia. So in a South African theatre, man, it can get cold, it can get far below freezing. But you would shiver wearing that clothes. I mean, it was just damn cold in those clothes. It wasn't designed for cold climates at all. So people adapted, but that's another story. But the one thing you learn quite quickly and during your training and other places is you never say to the sergeant that you're cold. Because it would be something like this. It would be like, the sergeant would arrive early in the morning, instructor. Hello, chaps, how are you doing? All right? Yes, sir, no problem. Yes, sergeant. You, lad, how are you doing? It's a bit cold, sergeant. Really? Okay, man, fall in. And then you're on for a few miles, you come back, and now you're really flipping cold because, there's like sweat form, sweat turns into ice. So the next morning the sergeant arrives again. Hallo manne, hoe gaan dit hier? Is alles alright? Nou, 100% gezond, geen probleem. Dat is reg. Alles is reg. Ja. That's discipline. That's how it should be. Anyway, which makes this thing also a bit different, is it had a day glow inside. So you could turn it upside down so that when there's helicopters involved and you don't want them to shoot you, you would put the day glow so they could see you. Have I ever found any terrorists with day glow and things? Yeah, apparently yes, also with Bibles. Now what is funny about this cap is besides but it's different, it doesn't really, I don't think the army had much of this. I think the armored people might have had something like this, but not in camo. Is that it had like this little thing here at the back to protect against your neck, the sun. And here you can see the camo is not as faded. That's what it would have looked like originally. But again, if you wore it like this, Constable, jy lyk soos 'n fucking kibaan. Glo jy nie in die Here nie? Is jy 'n fucking kommunist, my seun? Kom hier, kom hier, kom hier. I'm not gonna translate that, guys. You know what I mean. Excuse my language. It's the way we spoke. But you can see even the buttons would be brown. You protect against shining. So you never actually roll this thing down. That's why it's still in good condition. Of course, you might have a few bell alarms there somewhere who might roll it down. But God will not have mercy if you found wearing it like that. And then right here and there on the edges, you also have like this thing. This is supposed to protect your ears now, you know, because your ears can get damn cold, especially if you don't have hair. Like Rebecca says to me, the more weight I lose, and I weigh 89 kilos now, I lost 27, is that your ears are getting bigger, man. Yeah, true. So when you're getting older too, you know, I'm sure your brain shrinks or something. But anyway, you had these things down here. You had like little flaps which you could wear there on the, you know, on your ears. And some people did that, but again, it was frowned upon. So some people would simply just take scissors and cut it out. Now, okay, if you cut it out, it is actually technically damage of state property, injury to state property. It's a crime. You can be accused of it, and you can actually be court-martialed for it, or at least getting a pig, which is the same type of thing. It will cost you your promotion for a few years. So I kept mine. I think some of them had like a little string attached as well for the wind. But anyway, this is what the police cap looked like. I hope you people, if you see one again, you will appreciate it a bit. I wore this one many, many times. Yeah. We actually looked quite smart in uniform, mate. We looked smart. And then we had old style webbings, which our army, I suppose, had too. This is one of the new ones. The old ones had little thingies here, which you could clip things in onto, whatever you wanted to clip in there. But normally you had your webbing belt, which had like a lock coming like this. By the way, this thing fits me. I'm quite proud of that. And you would write your blood group A+ for me here on your belt. You also had dog tags, which I don't have anymore. My late wife took them with her when she went back to the US. So that got lost when she died. But you would wear your blood group here too, for obvious reasons. And on this would be your pistol, your water bottle, whatever else you had available would be on this. And I'm telling you, to get these things to fit you like this, you actually use pliers. You would press these things in so that it fits, and it fits perfectly. There's no such thing as a fat constable in the counterinsurgency units. No. And then inside here, you would have your name. I would write Kotze. And some people would, of course, say to me, yeah, but isn't that, you know, the enemy can know where you are? Well, man, you always have your appointment certificate with you anyway. Even if you're in camouflage, it doesn't matter, you're still a policeman. So that never really bothered us. But anyway, this was the old web belt. We never had what the army had in this fantastic new sailcloth type of chest webbing, which the idea came from special forces who stole it from the terrorists. So they were called those days. Today they were honorable members of parliament. Yes, all of it. But, you know, the chest webbing actually worked quite well. It worked very well, in fact. But there was, again, it comes out in my books, Gewetenlose Strate as well as Mean Streets. There was a bit of argument in the police when we started getting issued to a R5 or R4 against the R1 or the R2, which is a fantastic weapon to shoot a car with, a stolen car. Our theory was if you could lie flat enough, because we were fighting a lot in urban areas, and sometimes you wouldn't believe, but the street pavement, if you lie in the street and the pavement is where there's a fantastic place to take cover on, to find decking, and you would, there was an argument whether you could be low enough to cover yourself, and well, the counter argument was is R5 and R4 had almost twice as many rounds, even if they were lighter. And there were even ways of loading your magazine. You had tracers at night, and you had a certain way of doing it, and there would be, the last 4 rounds might be a tracer, because the training was of such a nature that if you count your shots, and let me tell you again, God will not help you from where off if you cannot tell me how many shots you fired. I want to know. And I want to know how many you've got left. And I want to know from your platoon leader and platoon sergeant, every one of your men, how much does he weigh? Because I need to work these things out. I need to know these things. It has to do with helicopters and giants, as you call them, the pumas and whatever. We need to know these things. And that was the professionalism which was taking place. So you would have different magazines on your weapons during night shift than you would have on during the daytime. But of course, that might have been us. I don't know. It depends on where you were. The flying squads were a bit different. We were a bit of elite units, not special forces units, elite units, in the sense that they could chase you away if you didn't man up. And you would always respond first to the most serious crime, hopefully terrorism, bomb attacks, whatever, murder, rape, man, anything which is violent. You would be there first, and you had 4 minutes. 4 minutes since Romeo gave you that call. And once you say, Romeo, you're responding, man, it's fantastic. You can hear that engine running at 6,500 revs all the time. You hear the tires squealing, you hear the siren. If you're in a dark unit, you hear the dark at the back. And then you have like a PA system also, and the 2 microphones look exactly the same. So you might pick up a PA system to tell this house, the civilian person here in front of you, to give way. Can not see the damn blue light. Can you not hear the siren, mate? Many times you can't actually, because we were traveling at the speed of sound. It's a flying squad joke, not really, of course not. But there were all sorts of techniques. If you come at a crossing and you can see there's cars standing there and there's no way they're going to give way to you, all you do is, and they don't notice your blue light and siren anyway, what you do is you just lock your brakes the days before ABS. So that car that flying squad car would actually start lock all 4 brakes, and it would start sliding. And with that comes a screeching noise. And I guarantee you will look in your mirror to see what's coming. And then you see this police car is coming, it's not going to stop you. Yeah, you give way. Yeah, and then of course we go through. The other way of doing it was you would, in the darkness, if it was nighttime in the city, you could look in the glass windows, the glass displays, when there were still such things in the cities. And if you switch your lights off, you could see the lights approaching. If there's no lights approaching, then of course there's no lights. If there ain't no lights, then you can go. Because the criminal is not stopping, Many of them were terrorists, actually, trained terrorists, robbing banks and things, and they would not stop at the red light. They would go blind. And you would have to stop and then catch up again. And so sometimes you would go blind through that robot, that traffic light, because you switch your lights off and you could see something approach. It's a fantastic flipping way of doing things, I'm sure you'll agree. Unless the dark unit comes from the other side and they also use the same technique at the same time. Then afterwards, of course, you have to say, oh, no. You weet, luitenant, die remme net opgehou werk, ek verstaan dit nie, jy weet. En honde ouens, ja, luitenant, jy weet, ons het hier aangekom op pad na die klagte en die volgende oomblik hier kom blitspatrol die kar, maar ons kan sien die ou probeer breek, maar jy weet, met sy ratte, want het lyk my die remme, jy weet. Yeah, and the lieutenant, of course, is a very, very experienced policeman. Most of them were older, elderly lieutenants. They were warrant officers for a long time, and they would stand there and think of their own days with the valiance and the things we did to say. And I would say, something. Die bluebells, the mechanics. Those things happened, so we say. In fact, our brake pads on the Sierra XR6 lasted 600 kilometers. That's 2 night shifts. If you then count the tires had to be replaced every 10,000 kilos. They lasted about 5. So the last few weeks you would really slide around on that car. It made for very, very interesting driving. But things were going from bad to worse because, as I started saying in the beginning, is we had, when I arrived at the flying squad, we had a P-38 pistol, Walter, 8-round magazine, 8 rounds on spare magazine. When I left, we had Z-88s with 15 plus an extra, which we bought ourselves 20 rounds. We would have compensators on our pistols. Because other than the army, we considered our pistols actually being the first weapon of choice. Of course, depending on where you are. If you're on the border, then of course you had the R1 with lots of magazines, not enough, but a few. You would have a mag. We did the mortar course as well, the 16mm, I think, the Patmore. Did all of those things. You had mags, of course, on your Casper as well, but not as bad as Koofut. Koofut were really much better armed than we were, but they faced a lot better threat, higher threat, and I think the coin units did. By the way, interesting thing which comes out in my police books which I wrote, which is Takara don't get. And let me tell you quickly about that is, as things progressed from Sharpeville in 1960, where the police were armed with 303 rifles and Sting from the Second World War machine guns, submachine guns, and all those people were killed. From those days on, the police were actually disarmed to deal with rioters. Yes, listen to me again, you takar. They were disarmed. Read my books and wake up. Every man would have a pistol. It doesn't matter what pistol, but you had a sidearm with. Standard police training. And that's where the Air Force also made a mistake, where the 28 Squadron guys. They would take away, as far as I understand it, the actual bullets of the troops, of the army troops when they go up north. They would take it away. They were not armed. They had their rifles with them, but they were not armed. Not loaded. The police always had their sidearms with them fully loaded. Yeah. So I sat there more than once and I saw this flight engineer, boordtechnicus, Fossie. That's what they taught us on legacy. There's no such thing as 'n vlugingenieur, mense. Daar bestaan nie so iets nie. Dis 'n boordtechnicus en word wakker. That's what they told me anyway. But that flight engineer, you know, the Air Force has very strange humor. I must tell you, the humor is a bit weird. They would walk around in that aircraft and you're sitting there packed as a damn sardine. And you would walk around and then they would have a little torch, flashlight, and look at the ceiling where there's no ceiling, you know, it's like real metal and wires and things running there, making strange sounds as well. And he would look at it and he'd shake his head, you know, make the sign of a cross, or I don't even know, I'm not Catholic. And then he would shake his head and he would put his headphones on and he talks to the pilots and then he's like looking at us and says, guys, it's nie goed nie, man, it's nie goed nie, it's nie goed nie. And you know, the poor constable sitting there turns white in the face. Poor troopie thinks he's never going to see his girlfriend again and he misses his mom, you know, and it's terrible. And then, of course, that spiral dive for him down. But anyway, yeah. I always thought to myself, yeah, I tell you what, you crash this aircraft on purpose, I shoot you in the stomach twice. Double tap, we know how to do that too. Funny thing about the double tap, I speak to US Special Forces, I know a few of them don't know what's a double tap. Amazing. You should read my books, you'll find out where a double tap comes from. As far as we know, it's from SOE, Special Operations Executive, the saboteurs wartime, created by that arch liar Churchill. And if you think Churchill was a hero, I'll leave a link for you to go and look at the episode I made about Churchill. We talk about him in my books as well. He was no hero. He was a war criminal. Shyster too. Took money. Yeah. Got bribed by the Zionists to become a Zionist. Yeah, we paid his debts. And then suddenly he went from anti-Semitic to very, very friendly to Palestine, meaning the new state of Israel. Yeah, funny. Strange. How did the heroes fall? But anyway, that's where it comes from, a double tap, and then of course Rhodesians were using it, and since Rhodesian instructors were training us in the police, we adapted it in SAP COIN as well. And I'm sure you guys in the army did the same, but therefore I'm not saying there's something wrong with automatic fire. In fact, automatic fire at the beginning of an ambush is a fantastic thing, and God will not have mercy on you if I don't hear that LMG going all the way. I want to hear it. I want it to cover. I don't want a fear stilte. I hate that word. There's no such thing as fire silence. I don't know how to translate that. But there must always be shots going out. You must keep your heads down. You must, anyway, guys, you know what I mean. So anyway, let me get to the jacket, which started this conversation of yours, of mine, to you. As I said, Commandant Atspies was telling me about the jacket he got from the police when he went to Rhodesia. Now it just so happens I've got the jacket here. Yeah, this is mine. It still fits me. Here it is. You can see it has long sleeves, but nothing inside these sleeves. So in other words, you would have a shirt, and your camo shirts were all long sleeve. You could cut it off, make it short, but there might be a problem if they catch you doing that, because that is damaging state property. Same with your pants. Only the instructors at Milieuscope, as far as I know, had like short camo pants, but you could cut yours off as well and take the risk of being court-martialed. So anyway, you had it like this. It is a really nice jacket, really nice camo. Look, guys, even the buttons were camouflage, which I always found very, very interesting. And then on the inside, let me just unbutton it here for you. Man, I'm enjoying this episode. I hope you do too. You actually had spare buttons, because you would take a sewing kit with you to a border, so you would be able to stitch your clothes if needs be. But you had two of them. And then on the inside, there was space. You can see there's buttons going down here, like this, and on the other side, like this. Here's one, if I can show you like that, and there would be ones further down, there's another one. That is because you had like an inner, exactly what the Commandant was saying. I don't have it here, I lost mine long ago. But you had like an inner which you would fasten onto it in winter time, and then you could take it out, of course, if it wasn't winter. You could also roll this thing up, and it becomes quite a nice pillow. But normally you would use something else for pillow. And then you had the normal, you had in your neck, it could come right across like this. I don't know if you can see it. You had like a little thingy which would go across, so you could button it up all the way. Because really, guys, it got cold. It got really, really cold. I see here that we even have the date on which it was made. It's a size extra large. It's way too big for me now, by the way. And the name of a company which made it, but it's very faded. I can't really read it. And then you'll have pockets. You'll have pockets here on the top, like this, and it had like a place to button it down with. Button it down. Because let me say again to you, if you're in any kind of uniform, you better look manly, or female. If you're female, you better look good. We wait our female members, once a week, like slagskape. Yeah, no, I had to go and stand on the scale. There were no such thing as a fat constable. Nah, we knew how to deal with him. Yeah, place called Milieuscope, verdrag, polio. Yeah, you'll find out. Mm, mm. So anyway, you had like a pocket here, you could put things in it, and you would always tie it down. Really, I'm not joking. If a sergeant sees you walking around or slouching like a damn Cuban, and there's things hanging from you which ain't issued to you, we know how to deal with people like you. We know how to deal with Tatara. We understand what to do with hippies. So anyway, so you would have this and it would be buttoned down. And then you have a kind of nice big pocket here at the bottom also. This is on both sides, guys. You would have a pocket here with things in there as well. Both sides, as I said, same. You would have your one here, both of them. See, even the one on the bottom is like a button, and then you could actually tie it down. And then you had like here in the middle, you had a string. So you could pull the string so it could come, pull it a little bit in. I never did that because I thought it might intervene with me getting to my pistol. But you're trained for that as well. Let me tell you, there's different ways of wearing a pistol, whether you're sitting down or whether you're driving or whether you're walking around, whatever. It is the old joke, because the pistol holsters, they never adapted it to the Z88s and things like that. And so what happened is you would have a pistol holster designed for a P38 and the thing wouldn't really fit that well. So whenever you see a policeman running, he had one hand on his head holding his pet, and the other one is holding his firearm. And that's how you run, man. You could run quite quickly like that. You'd be surprised. Not as quickly as a police dog, no, but you could run. But anyway, that's I thought I'll just share this with you. Took a bit longer than what I thought, and I hope you find it interesting. For me, it's all about history, guys. There's a lot of people out there who's never actually seen or even touched the police camouflage uniform, and therefore it's important to me to show to you this is what it looked like, this is how it was, and no, it wasn't rainproof at all. No flip. If it rained, you got wet, and you don't complain. Be grateful for the rain. You could catch the water. Never had enough water. Caspers had huge water tanks on them, but there was never enough water. And if you're long enough in the bush with this, it starts stinking. Yeah, it starts stinking. And it would be soaked with sweat. And during training, they issue you're not during training of your counterinsurgency course, you're not even wearing this because you're not entitled yet. It's issued to you, but you're nog 'n roofman, wat fout met jou? So we will give you a overall, and you would have like a camouflage overall on, which is fine. It's nice. You get it issued, you run around with it, it's nice and sweaty, you can wash it. You have to give it back when you leave. Same with your sleeping bag. Whether they ever wash the sleeping bags, I don't know, because some of them smelled. Yeah, it was horrible. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Your problem came if you had a bit of a stomach and you had to run to the nearest tree, which of course in a border area and during training you didn't just go to a tree. There's an entire process for you who don't know. Before you take a number 2 or number 1 somewhere, there must be all-round security, like you would secure a helicopter when it comes into land. There's many ways of doing that, not going into it. But the fact is, your mate would be standing guard while you're doing whatever you're doing. And to get out of that overall that quickly was a bit of a bloody story. And if you don't get out of it quickly enough, you can think what happened, or perhaps the number 2 is caught up in it, and you bring the overall back up, and then you feel it wet. Yeah, and even your best mate will not stand next to you, man. Will not stand next to you. And then if you're right in a patrol, you just keep on stinking, but you walk way on the side where the LMG gunners are, You don't walk in the middle where everybody can smell you. You pull, man, you pull. Always ask the helicopter crews if, when they pick up special forces or the other guys, free to, or whoever, even the police, pick up the lads. Yeah, they say, because you learn how to breathe through your mouth, man. It's guys are having a bit of a pong there. They say it's a good pong when your uniform can stand by itself. Guys, there are so many memories. I want to invite you, please come and talk to us. Come and tell us about your equipment. If you have a bush hat and a few things with you, come and tell us about it. It's important. It's important for your children. I'm not making a joke when I say this to you, but the winner actually do write the history. And in many ways, we were not the winners. We lost politically, which means that unless you're out here talking to me and explaining these things, I'm afraid that it's going to be a very askew type of view out there. And don't be angry when people call you a baby killer and a racist and all those things, which you are not, because you kept quiet. You know, in law, I was an attorney for many years. In law, there's no such thing as keeping quiet unless it has to do with a criminal case against you. Then, of course, you have to use your right to silence. As I explained to you in another video, you have a right to remain silent according to the judge's rules. And in the police, we had our own version of that. So, meneer, jy die reg om stil te bly, maar ek sal jou aanbeveel om nie daai reg uit te oefen. Want ek gaan vir jou bliksem tot jy vir my vertel waar daai lijk is. Can't say that ever happened, you know, it's one of those jokes again, so I don't take it too seriously. Of course, if a guy then can actually show you where the body is, then you have to do something with the body being there. Huh? You just walk past. You're Mr. Innocent. So you walk past and here's the body. Just like that. The same body I saw you, according to this witness, left the tavern last night with. Yeah. And then you found the body. Right. I don't think there's any story we haven't heard before, and I don't think there's anyone we ever believed. But the point I'm trying to make to you is that keeping quiet now about your service years, guys, it's a wrong thing to do. Remember what they did to you when you came back from the border. Nobody was interested. Nobody wanted to know. Remember what I said to you? We would go from our camouflage uniform to our blue uniform. And nobody knew. Nobody even knew the police were there, by the way. Even though we were there longer than you, longer than the army. And so we didn't talk. We kept quiet because that's the Afrikaner thing. That's our way, man. We don't talk. We don't need the limelight. We know what we did. Yeah. But the thing is, no one else knows what you did. And so the story will stand. If you go to court and you don't oppose to what these lawyers are saying, and you just say when you say, no, I've got nothing to say, what do you think the judge is going to believe? He has to go on on what he's being told. Yeah, these guys saying you were a baby killer, a racist, and a horrible person, and all those things. And here you're standing and you say, nee, ons wil nie praat nie, man. Nee, Koos, nee. Guys, we've got a unique opportunity at Legacy, and I don't know how long it's still going to go on, to be honest. We've got a unique opportunity which God has created for us. It wasn't me. We've got more than 1 million hours of view, which we know about, millions of views, which we know about, probably a lot more, because we're being suppressed. But the fact is, our stories are out there. And unless you come and tell me your story, there is no way you can defend yourself. Just remember that. If you don't want your children to think you were a racist idiot who just followed orders because you're stupid, man, come and talk to us. Anyway, God bless until we meet again.
Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell to receive notifications.